The son questioned the Lord about why he bothered bringing a rifle when he would eventually kill the prey with his vampire abilities anyway. Since it was a gift from the mayor, he might as well try using it once to make a good impression. After all, in order to get along with humans, they have to play by their rhythm, whether they like it or not. The Lord and his son returned from hunting, only to notice that the lock to the storage room had been pried open. Inside, they discovered a silver stake covered in blood, a weapon taken from a hunter who had tried to assassinate the Lord not long ago, and one capable of killing a vampire. But that wasn't the worst of it. The lady of the house had been murdered. Suspicion immediately fell on the hunter. Given the circumstances, however, a police investigation was as good as abandoned. With the discrimination vampires faced, especially those who openly acted as human allies, the family couldn't exactly expect much help from the authorities. With no other choice, the Lord turned to a monster-specialized detective for help. Upon their first meeting, the family was shocked to discover that the said detective was a severed head of a girl inside a birdcage. She reassured them that being a detective was actually the perfect job for her. Fortunately, all she needed was her head to function properly. With the help of her assistant, the detective examined the murder scene and pointed out a few crucial pieces of evidence. With an expression of peace still on her face, there were no signs of a struggle, suggesting that the madam had been killed swiftly while she was asleep. There was also a wound on her chest that matched the shape of a stake. Then came another important clue. The key to the storage room was in the possession of exactly two people, the Lord and his butler.
I knew it! It's either the Lord or the butler's doing.
Not so fast, son. Hold your horses. Even if they assumed an outsider had broken into the mansion and murdered the madam, several questions still remained. Why didn't the madam notice the intruder when vampires were supposed to have extremely keen senses? Why would an intruder attack at night when vampires were at their strongest and most active? How did the intruder know about the silver stake hidden inside the storage room? And how did they know the exact location of the madam's room and even the time she would be taking her nap? Most importantly, why would the intruder remove the silver stake after killing the madam only to put it back inside the storage room? All of these questions made one possibility increasingly likely. The intruder had come from inside the mansion. Eyes spinning, the Lord tried to compose himself, feeling dizzy from the barrage of deductions, suggesting that the killer might be someone from within his own mansion. At the dining table, the interrogation continued. The detective questioned everyone about their whereabouts around the estimated time of death, eventually narrowing the suspects down to two people who had no alibi, the first son and the butler. Later that day, she gathered everyone together once again. This time, she intended to put an end to the mystery once and for all. The madam happened to enjoy carpentry. Because of that, the sound of hammering coming from her room wouldn't have seemed suspicious. Anyone hearing it would simply assume she was working on one of her projects. Yet, no one nearby had heard any hammering. If the murderer had taken advantage of the situation by hammering the stake into the madam's chest, someone should have heard the noise. Thus, the detective realized that the murder weapon couldn't have been used that way. Perhaps it wasn't an actual stake, but simply something shaped like one. The murderer couldn't afford to hit it too hard either, as a forceful blow would simply break the makeshift stake. That left only one explanation. The murderer had to rely on their own strength to drive it into the madam's chest. Since one of the two weapons capable of killing a vampire, silver, had already been ruled out. That left only holy water. More specifically, frozen holy water. When frozen, it could be shaped into a stake strong enough to pierce the body, yet far too fragile to withstand a hammer blow. And once it melted, it would leave behind no evidence. Sure enough, another question immediately followed. Why use a frozen stake instead of the real silver one? To create an alibi by messing with everyone's perception of time. Before leaving for his usual hunt, the Lord had checked the storage room one last time. Nothing was out of place. Then the Lord and his son left the mansion. When they returned, they discovered that the storage room had been broken into, with the bloodied silver stake waiting inside. But that was the trick. The silver stake wasn't the murder weapon. It was planted evidence. The real murder had happened earlier. The murderer had killed the madam with a frozen holy water stake, allowing it to melt away and erase the weapon completely. Then, sometime afterward, they broke into the storage room, covered the silver stake with blood, and placed it back inside. By doing so, they created the illusion that an outside intruder had entered the mansion while the Lord and his son were away. The entire break-in was nothing more than a deception designed to manipulate everyone's perception of when the murder had actually taken place. With the murderer's method finally exposed, only one mystery remained: the identity of the killer. So, who was it? Find out in Netflix Season 2. As interesting as it may be to find out who the culprit is, what is a story without a little introduction in it? The forever 14-year-old immortal girl, who had been alive for the past 900 years, found herself at her wit's end when an old man suddenly attacked her and ran off with her body. Wondering what good there was in living with nothing but a severed head, the girl and her maid sought out a certain theater performer known as the Oni Slayer to strike a deal. Knowing that the man had the constitution of a half-human, half-Oni, the girl offered him a way to extend his lifespan. After all, it was only a matter of time before he lost his sanity and was completely consumed by the Oni within him. In exchange, the girl wanted nothing more than for the man to end her life. As it turned out, only an Oni could inflict a fatal wound upon an immortal. It sounded like a pretty sweet deal for the man, hence he readily accepted the offer to prolong his life. However, he refused to kill the girl. It transpired that the old man who had stolen her body matched the description of the man who had previously turned him into a half-Oni and, in the process, stole away his humanity. Thus, instead of killing the girl, he proposed an alternative solution. They would find the old man together and retrieve her body. The girl accepted, accompanied by a kiss to seal the deal. Moi. Their journey across the map creates an East meets West crossover, a story where folklore creatures and characters from entirely different fictional worlds, such as Sherlock Holmes, Arsène Lupin, and the Phantom of the Opera, are somehow thrown together into one shared universe. The story unfolds layer by layer, with each arc feeling like its own story, complete with its own plot and characters, while gradually tying back into the bigger picture. At the same time, even as the journey shifts toward the West, it never completely loses its Japanese identity. The Oni Slayer, for instance, communicates through a theatrical style that draws heavily from traditional Japanese stage storytelling,